A survey of 1,116 employees at nonprofit organizations across Canada indicates that more than one-third of workers regularly feel burnt out and exhausted. The survey was conducted between February 21st and March 14th by a Toronto-based research company on behalf of the media company Future of Good. Anouk Bertner with Future of Good says that the report is intended to provide hard data that could help promote change in the nonprofit sector. And she joined us earlier to discuss the reason behind conducting this report and what the next steps with this information will be.
So we have anecdotal evidence that there have been issues in the nonprofit sector for a long time. I think we've all been hearing these stories before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, but there is no data. There is not representative data in this sector. And so it makes it really hard to be able to understand the scope and scale of the problem, where to intervene, who is struggling the most in terms of well-being. So now that we have this data, it allows us to be more effective with our solutions. So now that we have this information, we can see who is struggling. Because I think we anecdotally have some thoughts around this. But one of the things that's really impressive about this survey is that it is the first of its kind in Canada and potentially internationally. We can't find any other examples of this, of a representative sample. And this, I'm not a survey expert, but this representative piece is really important because most surveys are convenient samples. So that means that folks send it out in their newsletter, they try and get as many answers as possible. But what winds up happening is that we overrepresent certain groups. So oftentimes office workers get overrepresented because they are the ones who have time to sit at their desk and answer a survey. So in our group, in our survey, we really looked at a representative sample, and that's why we partnered with Environics Research because they're experts in this. So we have a lot of frontline nonprofit workers. We have a lot of young people. We have a sample that mirrors the StatsCan information about who works in the sector. So because of that, we can look at the results of this and we can see that it is really young people who are struggling the most. And there are many reasons for that. Part of it is that they are oftentimes entry level. They are the ones who are really facing the affordability crisis, the cost of living crisis, like very, very acutely right now. And I think that is a really, really important group to work on because this is the future of the sector. If young people come into the sector and they feel like it's unaffordable, that they have poor well-being, that they're burnt out, exhausted, that they are food insecure, they are going to leave the sector. And then we will not have that talent coming in and supporting us. So I think like that's one of the big takeaways for me is, how do we support young people in this space?
We also spoke with Ms. Bertner about if Future Good found any of the survey results surprising.
I think it did, it validated a lot of things that we already knew. And I think that's really helpful because I think, that means that it makes intuitive sense. One of the things I found surprising is that there is not a lot of difference in well-being across the country. So I thought there would be a lot more differences between provinces. We hear a lot about Western Canada alienation, and we hear about different parts of the country having very different experiences. And we found that the only province that had a statistically significant difference in terms of their well-being is Quebec. And that actually makes a lot of sense because in the province of Quebec, they have a different governance structure and they have a different funding structure around social impact. So it makes sense that their well-being would be significantly different. But I thought that was really interesting in terms of how we think about regional representation across the country. So I think there's pieces like that are interesting. And then one of the other things that I really enjoyed is, when we get into solutions and like what can we do about supporting people is that having 5 or more formalized HR practices inside a nonprofit was highly correlated to better well-being outcomes. So that is something very, very tangible that nonprofits across the country can be doing. And so a formalized HR practice might be something like having an annual performance review or having clear salary bands. And we'll be digging into this and finding out a bit more of the why. But I expect it's going to come down to autonomy. Even if someone is not in a great situation, where they wish that they were earning more or they need to be earning more in order to pay their bills. If they have a performance review and if they know where the salary bands are and they know that, they might be in this situation right now, but, in 6 months they might get promoted and then this is where they could move in the organization, they can make a choice. So they can either make a choice to stay in that organization, or they can realize this is not going to get better for me. I need to find other work. And that level of autonomy is really, really powerful. So that's something that nonprofits can do that does not cost a lot of money. It does take time and it does take effort, and there's some expertise around HR to do that. But it just reinforces the importance of doing it.